Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan, off the Motor City Mad Mouth, and alongside of me tonight is my co-host, David Levin, making his first appearance on the show as a regular one in our version of Monday Night Baseball. I am Al Michaels along with Jim Palmer. I don't know who's who, but anyways, that's our version of it. Good evening, David.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight?
Oh, we're doing great. Yeah, looking forward to making this a regular occurrence as you settle into this role as our baseball co-host every week. So, you ready to make this thing work, Mr. Levin?
I am. Like I said to you before, I've been working forward to this all weekend. Hopefully we can do the Monday Night Baseball crew justice here. I definitely think I have much better hair than Al Michaels. Not so sure about Jim Palmer, though.
Wow, Jim.
Big favorite of my mom's, so I got a lot to contend with.
Well, I can promise you one thing about Jim Palmer. I won't be walking around with his jockey underwear because I'm not as good looking as he is, and he made a lot of money off that jockey underwear. So anyways, David, the focus on tonight is 2020 realignment. Okay, but before we get to that, let's talk about some of our goals with the show, about what we're looking to bring to the table.
Well, first of all, above everything else, this is supposed to be a fun and enjoyable event for us, and to reach as many of our listeners as possible, and for them to be able to gain a little insight as to our passion for the game. We definitely want to bring our own opinions and insight to what's going on, especially in a time like this. It seems like there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, which is a good thing. I know that nobody's out of the woods yet, and I know that COVID-19 is still on everybody's mind. But it looks and appears that at some point soon, baseball's going to be back, and that's the best thing we could hear in quite a while.
All right. This is our first of a two-part series about potential realignment possibilities. On our next broadcast, we're going to focus on the Arizona format, but tonight we're going to focus on the Grapefruit League and the Cactus League. What I'm going to do, David, is go over some of the potential divisions. We're going to lead off here in the Grapefruit League, and then we'll talk about whether or not some of these would be good possibilities for a permanent realignment. I don't know. This is the type of year where baseball can experiment with a lot of different things, and 2020 is a perfect opportunity to see some of these, let our imaginations run amok. With that said, the Grapefruit League, one of the proposed divisions is the North Division, considering the Detroit Tigers. They play in Lakeland. The Philadelphia Phillies are in Clearwater. The Pittsburgh Pirates are in Bradenton. The New York Yankees and Tampa. And the Toronto Blue Jays out in Dunedin. So, I can't wait to get to Clearwater at some point to see the Phillies. I haven't been to that. The last time I was over in Clearwater was at the old Jack Russell Stadium. Otherwise, and the Toronto Blue Jays have made some changes with their park, although I remember going there many, many years ago. So let's talk about that Northern Division, and then we'll get to the South and then the East, and then we'll go to the Cactus League. How do you like those five teams?
I like it because it offers a little, above everything else, it offers an insight for us to see teams play each other more than normal, interleague play, which presents, different matchups with different pitchers and different hitters, different scenarios. I tend to like it. It doesn't seem like it is top heavy. It seems like it's fairly balanced, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that division's pretty interesting. A lot of people underestimate the fact that the Detroit Tigers and New York Yankees are a much better rivalry than most people actually think. Because when you talk about some of the players that went to Cooperstown via those organizations, there's quite a few. The Detroit Tigers and the Toronto Blue Jays are separated by about 4.5 hours. And Detroit and Pittsburgh is a rivalry that you see during interleague play. And then you also have Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, who are Pennsylvania rivals. So that's a pretty interesting grouping there, David.
I like it. I like the idea that for purposes, it's fairly close in proximity to each other, and I think that's what you want. Just because you're a fan of Detroit or you're a fan of the Yankees or, like I'm a fan of the Marlins, don't hold that against me. People do watch other teams in the stands, in the standings, and they do follow players, and this gives, fans in the stands, provided if they allow fans to attend the games, they'll get to see, their favorites and some of their rising stars, maybe sooner rather than later.
Yeah, notwithstanding the Detroit Tigers and Toronto Blue Jays also brings back the Detroit Red Wings and the Toronto Maple Leafs. So there's definitely a history between those respective cities. With that said, let's go into the Southern Division. And this one's really interesting. So you've got the Atlanta Braves, the Baltimore Orioles, the Boston Red Sox, Minnesota Twins, Tampa Bay Rays. The Braves obviously built a new stadium in Northport, which is along I-75. The Baltimore Orioles are in Sarasota. The Boston Red Sox are in Fort Myers, as are the Minnesota Twins, about 2 miles away. And then, of course, the Tampa Bay Rays. All of these franchises are located on the I-75 corridor, as is the Pittsburgh Pirates. But they're, you have to put the Pirates somewhere. They're further north on the I-75. So one thing I should point about the Atlanta Braves and Boston Red Sox is once upon a time, the Boston Braves took place, and now you have Atlanta-Boston. So elaborate from that, David.
Well, you stole my thunder a little bit, but that's fine. As soon as we start talking about it, it popped in my head that the Braves and the Red Sox have a rich history together, because of their affiliations. But remember too that the Minnesota Twins and the Atlanta Braves played that classic in 1991, that World Series that broke my heart. At the time I was a Braves fan, and you had Kirby Puckett, you had Kent Herbeck, and you had I can't name it, Gary Gaetti, and all those players that were people that I watched, as a teenager in my 20s. It makes for interesting baseball, and if people believe the purity of the game, then evidently the rivalries are what are going to make things exciting. How do rivalries of yesteryear when we were growing up compare to what happens, this year? I actually like that division maybe of all the ones that they've talked about.
Well, don't lose sight of the fact they had Jack Morris out dueling John Smoltz in that 10-inning game as well.
That was
1-0 affair. That was unbelievable. I don't know.
Yes.
There are a lot of great World Series performances, but I'll take that Jack Morris playing in his hometown over John Smoltz, a guy who's actually from my neck of the woods, the Metro Detroit area. So it's like John Smoltz grew up probably, idolizing Jack Morris, but there's a few definitely good Minnesota connections that led to, indeed, that World Series matchup. Tell me some other rivalries from within. Go ahead, David.
Real quick. Tell me really quick. John Smoltz was in the Detroit Tiger minor league system. He was traded to the Atlanta Braves. Who was the pitcher?
Doyle Alexander, Mr. Levin. You think you're getting that?
Okay, just making sure you're on.
Please,
top here.
Please. I knew that. I don't. I tend to not like to hear that. Although I shouldn't say that because Doyle Alexander did what he was expected to do: win a lot of games and got to the playoffs.
He got you a World Series. He did what you were supposed to do. So
well, he didn't get us to a World Series. He actually got us to the playoffs, only to lose to those Minnesota Twins. But
that's right. You're right.
Well, that's all right.
But he did his job. Let's just say that.
Well, I've been told by many executives, David, no matter what the sport is, there's certain types of returns. You get an immediate return, short term, and long term. Detroit got the immediate benefit with Doyle Alexander. The Braves got a Hall of Fame pitcher that led them to the World Series. So was it a win-win? To some extent, yes. There were some postseason appearances there. Doyle Alexander was a fine pitcher back in the day with the Baltimore Orioles. So not like the Detroit Tigers didn't know anything about him because the Tigers and the Orioles played in the same division. So, but in that particular case, you also have the Boston Red Sox, Baltimore Orioles, and Tampa Bay Rays, who still play in the same division anyways, would be there. And, of course, the Braves and the Twins. So, every one of these are well thought of, and I think they're pretty good. So, all right, from that standpoint, let's go down to the East, where you have the Houston Astros, Miami Marlins, the New York Mets, St. Louis Cardinals, Washington Nationals. Let's talk about the geography. The Houston Astros and the Washington Nationals are West Palm Beach. The Marlins and the Cardinals share a facility in Jupiter, and the New York Mets are up in Port St. Lucie. What are your thoughts about what we have here?
Well, first, I like the idea that they kept some of the rivalry of the National League East. Where teams are familiar with each other, and you're going to see rising players. The Braves have a young staff. The Marlins have up-and-coming players. They're probably a year or two away. I think the Mets could be a dark horse team, even without Syndergaard in the rotation. From that standpoint, it makes it exciting. I know you have to like the idea that there's a lot of interleague change there and possibilities up along the corridor. I believe that the Phillies may be the team that people are going to sleep on and are going to surprise a lot of people, provided, again, everybody's able to come back and perform like they were prior to stoppage. And I think that's going to be an underlying theme with all of these teams. That the Marlins were 12-6 in interleague play, in spring training, and that doesn't mean a lot, but it at least rejuvenated the fan base, and it gave them hope that this team was on the rise. I just hope that teams that were successful at the beginning of spring training don't lay an egg when they get back.
All right, let's talk about the division per se. The Astros and the Nationals, obviously the most recent World Series matchup.
Yeah.
And the St. Louis Cardinals and the New York Mets were in the same division for a lot of years. Of course, the Marlins,
right.
They're, to me, they're definitely a team I'm looking forward to. If this situation comes into play, I would welcome the opportunity to cover a lot more Marlins games here as we look here at the South Florida Tribune to build a much better relationship with them. So let's talk about the division. What matchups within this particular division would stand out to you?
I definitely like the idea of young pitching versus the Houston Astros, because regardless of the situation from their World Series win, I'm going to put an asterisk by it. They're one of the better hitting teams in baseball. You have young pitching staffs that are together, and strong pitching throughout. You can make a case for a solid starter on every single team. How they adjust to hitting, playing against a team that top to bottom is just solid as can be. Washington and Houston, that's something that's definitely an exciting thing, taking off from the World Series.
Right.
I want to see how Washington is able to take what is going on now. They're the defending champions. And until they're unseated, they're still the top team in Major League Baseball. Can they continue that kind of momentum, being able to play against a team like the Astros day in and day out?
Well, you got to look at the plus and minuses. The Astros lost, Garrett Cole to the Yankees. And, of
right.
course, who was it, their hitter that went over to the Angels? I'm drawing a blank.
You would ask me that question.
Well, I don't think so, but all right. Anyways, both teams suffered significant losses during the offseason. That's all that really is. It Rendon, I think?
Rendon went to the Angels.
Right, so there
Anthony
you go.
Rendon, third baseman.
Right,
yes.
So you had two key members of those teams that relocated. But I still think it's a pretty interesting division with the Mets and Cardinals, longtime rivals, and, of course, a new rivalry created between the Astros and the Nationals, and the Marlins fit in. Because I agree with you. I think the Marlins are definitely headed in the right direction without a doubt. But that said, okay, let's go across the country over to the Cactus League. We'll start off with the Northeast Division. The Arizona Diamondbacks play out in Scottsdale, that beautiful Salt River Fields, as does the Colorado Rockies, one of the best facilities at Salt River Fields. The Cubs play over a beautiful Sloan Park. The Oakland A's played over a Ho-Ho-Cam Park in Scottsdale. And San Francisco Giants also in Scottsdale. So you have two teams from Mesa, two from Salt River Fields out in Scottsdale, as well as the lone Mohegan in downtown Scottsdale with the Giants. So now you have the Giants and the A's in the same division. That's a pretty interesting group.
Yeah, I like that. If you like offense, that could be some of the best hitting that you'll see. I like the idea that you get to see the Giants and the A's. They play interleague play. And you remember what happened with the World Series and the earthquake, and
right.
It brings back nostalgia. As a kid, I was a Cubs fan. Anywhere they put the Cubs, I'm going to be excited. I really want to see what happens this year. It doesn't mean that they're finally going to reassess, rejuvenate, and they're going to make a run towards a World Series again, or do they going to have to wait another 108 years? I sure hope not. I want to see too whether their pitching staff holds up, and whether the starting rotation can get back into a rhythm where they're more dominant in the middle of the season. Again, this is all predicated on the fact they are playing more than a handful of games.
Right.
there's, and you understand too, Scott, like we talked about, there's a lot of variables that go into this. We could be seeing upside down divisions too, where, the Tigers and the Marlins and, Kansas City and teams like that are the ones that are taking the lead because it's a short season and they don't know any better and they jump out like firecrackers and, run away from their divisions.
Yeah, the thing about the Cubs that I really want to find out, whether it's this year or next year, is the David Ross, the new manager, and of course Joe Madden left. I want to see what a trickle-down effect, whether the Cubs should have retained Madden. It took them 108 years until they got a championship. Joe pulled it off, so for me, that'll be the underlying circumstances, whether a guy who has no managerial experience takes over for a guy who's had great success in the league. And I'm not talking about what only he did with the Cubs, but what about the fact that he took the Tampa Bay Rays to a World Series?
Right.
To me, is unbelievable.
He's when you look at things, you're going to say that he was one of the more underrated managers, at least of my generation, because people tend to forget about his time with Tampa Bay. They only focus on what he did with Chicago, which was amazing. But he took that little engine that could line up in Tampa Bay in that that awful stadium, which is just terrible.
Right.
And he produced a World Series winner. I don't know if you've been to see the Rays play, but that facility is just atrocious.
Oh, I've been there. I was there for a
okay.
series against the Detroit Tigers years ago. And, that was a stadium where, let me give you a little bit of a story behind it. There was a time when Tampa wanted a stadium across the street from where the Bucks were. They had signs saying this is where it was going to go. And as it turns out, Tampa said, the heck with it. You know what, we'll let St. Petersburg have it if they really want. And as a result, I don't think the team is that stadium is just horrible. But it will ultimately play itself out. But, that's pretty much I have seen a game there.
If there's ever you ever have a hurricane on the left coast of Florida, and I don't mean to any kind of harm to anybody, but if you want to sink one building that's on a hurricane or a tornado, hit Tropicana Field, please, and just wipe it out and make them start over.
Wow,
that just god awful.
That may be the only way they get out of that lease in that building, because I'll tell you what,
true.
For as little as a Marlins draw, they still have a 32,000 seat stadium. That's a beautiful stadium, just in the wrong part of town.
It is gorgeous down there, and they've made lots of changes to it this year. The one thing that is a drawback from playing these kinds of games is that some of the stadiums that made changes prior to the start of the season and in the off season, we're not going to get to witness that. The Marlins put a lot of money into changing the outfield. They brought the fences in. The facility around it is gorgeous. Those type of things are what draw people in. And I think you'll agree that baseball is a destination as much as any other sport, where you go to watch the game, but you experience the ambiance of it, the food, the location, the nostalgia that is associated with it.
Yeah, but in the case of the Marlins, they got a sweet deal from Miami to put that team there. I think that had they have gone in North Broward on a Dade County line, like where were they at before with Joe Robbie Stadium or anywhere else, I don't think attendance would be a problem. I think they were drawing a little bit more off the Latin community. More power to you if you get them in the ballpark. But it is a beautiful facility. Nobody's questioning what the facility is. The only thing people wonder about is the access to the Tri-County area. That, other than that, it's a beautiful stadium, and I've been there numerous times. So, but as far as the actual building, there's no problem with that. But yeah, Tropicana Field, forget about it. That's for another day. But let's talk about it. We have some interesting rivalries in that division. If for no reason in the Northeast division you had the A's and the Giants, that's one thing. So with that said, let's go over to the Western division of the Cactus League, where you have the Chicago White Sox, Cincinnati Reds, Cleveland Indians, LA Angels, and the Dodgers. You have the White Sox and Dodgers playing at Camelback Ranch out in Glendale. You have the Cincinnati Reds and Cleveland Indians playing at Goodyear. Been to that facility. And one of the ones that I think gets really underrated here is the LA Angels out in Tempe. I love that stadium because it's situated right in the mountains. It's a beautiful stadium. Now, what are you going to tell? Nobody's going to sit here and tell me that from an overall standpoint, does it suffice for the minor leaguers? Maybe they could do a little better there. But you know what? Location-wise and in terms of the beautiful scenery around it, the Angels is a great place, and I enjoy going to that stadium anytime I can. So what are your thoughts about this division. You have the Angels and the Dodgers in this division. Then you have the Reds and the Indians. So you have a city rivalry within the LA area, Ohio, and of course in the Northeast, you have the Battle of the Bay. I mean, we have some pretty automatic rivalries there.
I like the way that one sets up. And by the way, I'm extremely jealous of the fact that you've been to Arizona to see spring training baseball. It's on the bucket list. Got to find the RV and fire that up and maybe do that at one point. The Dodgers and the Angels are real interesting to me because I know that the Dodgers are perennial contenders, and then they get there and they kind of fizzle out. And I'm waiting to see whether this is the year that Kershaw is able to seal the deal and continue on his legacy. The Angels were very much improved with the addition of Rendon, which we talked about.
Right.
I know that the Yankees pursued him for a little while, and then he wound up in California. And honestly, I'm a little shocked at that. We're going to find out what a really good hitter he is in the American League, where hitting is a little bit more prevalent than it is in the National League. I like I'm talking about the Battle of Ohio. I like that as well. The Reds made significant improvements this year. The White Sox went all out. It was more like win now or bust in free agency. So I'm excited to see what they're able to do because honestly, they spend so much money. If they don't win, what a disaster that's going to be. So I'm excited about all of that. And Cleveland and the White Sox are rivals to begin with in the Central Division. So that one may be the tightest division of the ones we discussed, merely because of the built-in rivalries within the division. And then California, you're not going to see bad baseball between the Angels and the Dodgers. Definitely not.
Yeah, let's talk about Mookie Betts for a moment. Is he? He's an interesting story. Right now, it appears on the surface you wonder if he's a one-year rental.
Right.
And if he gets credited for service time, if they don't have the season, then you don't even get a game out of him, and then you gave up quite a few players for a guy that won't even appear in a game. Now, obviously, I have a feeling baseball's going to get a season in, but Mookie Betts, is he a half-year rental, one-year rental? Although I don't really doubt whether the Dodgers can afford to pay him because they're always on the high end of the payroll part. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting rivalries from within this. And I think a lot of these rivalries are really different with the first 5 divisions before you even get into the next one. So,
right.
And I look at these things and I just find it just totally interesting. So anything else you want to talk about with the West?
Actually, what I'd like to say is this, and then I wanted to say it before, and I'm getting old, so I forget things.
Join the club.
What this is doing, yeah, I know, but I was being nice to you, okay?
Okay. Well, don't be nice to me all the time. Let's head to the lab. Go ahead.
Okay. What I like about these ideas is that we really haven't talked about alignment. We haven't talked about changes to playing the game. We haven't talked about, what happens with the postseason.
Right.
These are all things that are being proposed because of a situation that has been created. And if it proves to be successful, then you're going to see more change.
Right.
Does this mean that this is a predecessor to what happens next? We have built-in rivalries with baseball all the time, and you're going to see the Cubs and the Cardinals no matter what. You're going to see, you're going to see Houston and the Texas Rangers and those type of rivalries. But this opens the door for other things.
Well, no doubt.
Does this mean that we realign like they did in the NFL with all the change, where Tampa and Miami are in the same division, which means they play each other? Does that mean that Philadelphia and Pittsburgh play again? As many times as they did because they were in the same division for so many years. Is there a possibility that we get to see, the Red Sox, play the Nationals more? Because I'd really like to see that kind of matchup as well.
Right.
I'm excited about it.
Let's go to the Northwest Division because I have some ideas about that'll lead me where I'm going to go. Northwest Division, you have the Kansas City Royals, Texas Rangers sharing a place in Surprise. You have the Padres and the Mariners over in Peoria. And the Milwaukee Brewers, believe it or not, are the only team that trains in Phoenix over at Maryvale. And so you have some interesting rivals in the Northwest. Let's break down these rivalries, and then we'll go into some of the external factors about what we've got here. And again, I've been to all the Cactus League facilities, and they're dynamite knowing that everything's within 45 minutes away. And bear in mind, the other facility that would be available there is Chase Field, as would be with the Grapefruit League. You also have Tropicana Field and Marlins Park if you ever needed them for the bigger venues down the road if you get fans. But that's something I'm just throwing out
and
there.
That's another question, too. We've talked about Chase Field so much.
Right.
And that's been part of the dialogue that we talked about for the two weeks, not just us, but ESPN and MLB.com and, whatever the major, MLB Network and all those things. If they have to use major league facilities, let's say that we get fans back and we get to playoff time and we know the almighty dollar is going to reign supreme in this.
Right.
Where's the division that says, okay, or not division, but where's the decision that says, okay, for sure we're using Chase Field because
right.
it's there, and then what other team, it's got to be, I'm assuming it has to be Miami and Tampa.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's Atlanta. I don't know if it's Atlanta. I just don't know how that,
No, it's within the Sunshine State, David. I mean, forget about Atlanta. To me, the only things we're talking about, Arizona. So, yeah, Chase Field's the only option in the Cactus League, whereas you have St. Petersburg and Miami, depending on what facility that they want to go to. If I were a betting man, I would probably say, if for no other reason, you go to Miami because it's a brand new facility. It's a great facility, has all the amenities. So that's what I think. But anyways, let's stay on point here. Now let's talk about the Northwest rivalries. And I'll repeat the names. You got Kansas City Royals, Milwaukee Brewers, San Diego Padres, Seattle Mariners, Texas Rangers. So go ahead, evaluate what you have here. I know a lot of the other divisions have certain rivalries. This one doesn't seem to be as clear-cut as some of the other ones.
No, it doesn't, and maybe that's a good thing.
And you have a lot of small market teams as well in this division, too.
It's small markets and teams that don't generally, you wouldn't perceive to be rivals. And
or
maybe that's
winners,
a good thing
for that
because,
matter. Think of how
winners,
many, Well, think of how many...
This is a loser division, okay? But Milwaukee is still one of the better hitting teams. As long as Yelich is playing, and by the way, I will pay money to watch him swing a stick. The Marlins are going to, of all the trades that the Marlins made once Jeter took over, I had said at the beginning, I said they're going to regret getting rid of Yelich. Such a sweet swing, really good outfielder, all-around good guy. He definitely has become an ambassador. Just to watch him play is a privilege.
Right.
And I think that, like you said, there's not a lot of winning there, not a lot of rivalry. They've lost a lot of games. That's the kind of division where somebody's going to sneak up and run away with it, and everybody's going to take notice and go, "Oh, wow, they're real." That type of reaction.
Well, David, let's put it in layman's term here, okay? The only of this 5 teams, the Kansas City Royals are the only team in this division that has won 2 World Series titles. The other ones haven't won a World Series. The Milwaukee Brewers haven't been to one since 1982. I believe the Padres have only been to maybe 2, I think, when they lost to the Yankees and the Tigers. Seattle Mariners have never been there, and the Rangers, I think, lost like 1 or 2 championships. So.
The Rangers have been there once or twice, I think, right?
Yeah, I think twice, if I remember right. But nevertheless,
but
it's only the Royals are the only ones that can say of this group as world champions. So they call it the losers division. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't have to editorialize that. It is what it is. The Royals have only 2 championships. The rest of them have barely ever gotten there, so you take what you've got. So with that said, let's talk about some other aspects of why I think this is positive. First of all, under this scenario, every single team, all 30 of them, will play in their own spring training facilities. They have their own weight rooms, facilities, or offices there, and you have all the head of their and I think athletic trainers and whatnot. This is a place where they rehab everybody. That's what I really love about this particular proposal. I don't want to give too much away from the Arizona side. That'll be for next week's broadcast. But I think that's a really, really big, helpful thing. And the only way that you can get Tampa and Miami in the same division is you have to add 2 more teams for expansion. So with that said, we're going to expand this program about 2 cities that you think would be high on the expansion. Because right now, I can't see the Marlins and the Rays in the same division, although you never know with massive realignment, because this group looks pretty good. So why don't you give me the cities that you actually view as potential top expansion possibilities.
Okay, are we talking expansion like in the next 5 years? Or are we talking about something where it's right now? This city's ready. This,
Well,
give me a little more parameters.
Well, let's just say within 5 years. I mean, the city's ready or not. I think within 5 years, because you got to remember, the Oakland A's are still trying to get a new stadium there.
Right.
I think they're going to get one there. Or the Rays, they got some big problems. So let's just say within 5 years, it could be 1 year to be 5. So we'll kind of loosen up the bubble a little bit. Give me your top.
Okay, can we do this? Okay, fine. Can we do this real quick? Bring baseball back to Montreal.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer that there needs to be at least 2 teams in Canada. Bring baseball back to Montreal. The fans deserve it. I mean, that's the cruelest thing. I think Oklahoma City could be a team that Oklahoma City could be a city that would bring about expansion. I like Montreal. I don't know whether they want to expand more out west. Can't leave out Vegas now because they have an NFL team. And if the Raiders do really well, we already know the Raiders are going to do really well in Las Vegas. Who am I kidding? Because that's the team that is, besides the Dallas Cowboys, the Las Vegas Raiders, there I go.
That's all right.
Yeah, you know what, you're going to go with it. But if there was a team that is perfect for the city of Las Vegas, it's the Raiders. I could see them expand. They have a hockey team there now. I could see them expanding and getting baseball. I mean, if regulations are what they are, then they have to be high on the list as well.
Okay, well, I'll give you 4 potential possibilities, and then you can go from there. All right, the one I would put at the top would be Montreal, because but the only way you get away with Montreal is you'd have to put them in the same division with the Blue Jays, so you create the NHL rivalry between the Canadians and the Maple Leafs, and then you have the Expos against the Expos against the Toronto Blue Jays. That's an automatic. Another one that I really actually like is Charlotte. And the reason why is
I hadn't thought about them.
Well, that's okay. Now I did, so you can't take it. Okay, so you have I-85.
Okay, no, go ahead.
You have I-85, so you're pairing it up with the Atlanta Braves, and then you more or less, you have. So I think the I-85 angle is pretty good. Las Vegas is interesting because let's just say Oakland were to leave Oakland, their AAA team actually goes to Las Vegas, and you have the Raiders and the A's pairing up.
That's right.
And then Nashville would be the only 4th one I could consider going with.
Okay, let me ask you this real quick, because I know that Trent Williams has already started the initiative. What do you think about baseball in Orlando?
No.
I'm against it.
No way.
I'm so against it.
No, I don't see it. Orlando, no way. You have to keep it Tampa, St. Petersburg. The only thing that makes it viable there is you have to get a much better stadium, whether it's in Hillsborough County, the Tampa area, or St. Petersburg. And I don't know whether I am totally confident with St. Petersburg. I've always thought the major reason why you have all the teams in the Tampa area, for me, is that's where the better support base is. I think baseball in Tampa, the Tampa Bay area, would be all right on the Hillsborough side. St. Petersburg. Now, unless you can tell me there's an excellent stadium with more accessibility, I just don't associate St. Petersburg as a baseball area. I like Tampa. I'm partial toward it. And that's where a lot of your major teams are anyhow. Tampa Bay Lightning play downtown. You have the Buccaneers play over off of Dale Mabry. There's no reason why the Rays shouldn't be able to play there. It's just a matter of getting their stadium situation worked out. And I'll tell you what, they're running out of time. I think that lease is up in like 2027, so 5 or 6 years away. And by then, you may not need an expansion team. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rays do move to Montreal if they can't get it worked out. I know they've talked about a split season in Montreal, Tampa. That to me doesn't work. Never will work. That's a stretch. But right now the clock is running on the Rays. Are they going to Montreal, or are they going to finally get it figured out in the Tampa Bay area, preferably Hillsborough County? That's where they belong. No, and I don't think Ybor City's a place to go either. I don't know how good the parking is over there, but there's got to be a decent location in the Tampa area, just not that one. Ideally, it should be right across the street from the Buccaneers, and you have the Yankees training facility there over at, I think it's the Yankees George Steinbrenner Field. So they won't tear that down, but there's nobody can tell me that they won't find another stadium right across the street, turn one of those into a parking lot where El Lopez Field used to stay. So, but Montreal's a natural.
I was going to say you've hit all the points that I've been thinking about. You can't take something that is mediocre, and I'm talking about baseball, the stadium in Tampa, and try and build it up to be something that it's not. You have to make sure to knock it down and bring it back up. And it's a shame because Tampa's team has been pretty good the past few seasons, and surprised people. It's better than people thought, and it's one of the top 5 or 6 teams this year, I think, that you're going to see play baseball. It sucks that the stadium's that bad.
Well, you're never going to knock George Steinbrenner Field down. That's a beautiful facility. But there's that parking lot next to Raymond James Stadium is there. There were 2 stadiums adjacent to each other once upon a time when I covered the Tampa Tarpons when they were affiliated with the Cincinnati Reds. So there's a stadium possibility right there if they wanted. I don't know where else they could put it, really. That makes any sense at all. Yeah, and let me tell you, with the Rays making a lot out of nothing with that franchise, there is no way anybody will tell me that Tampa's not a good baseball town. They need a good first-class facility in a very solid location, and I think right there on Dale Mabry is more than ideal for what they need to do. So, but Montreal's inevitable. I really do. Vegas, to me, if I had to put them in the order that I would put them in, Montreal, Charlotte, Las Vegas, and Nashville's a good place. I don't know if they can go ahead and build another stadium nearby. I don't think the one that they have in downtown is suitable enough to be expanded. I really don't. But that'll be for another day. But you need 32 teams in order to make your Tampa Bay and your Marlins go into play. I really do. I mean, even with this realignment that you have, okay, I still like, when you look at the Cactus League scenario, you're looking at the Phillies and the Pirates, for crying out loud. That, to me, is fantastic. It really is. But then you look on the other side, you have the natural rivalries between the Oakland A's, the San Francisco Giants, the Dodgers, and the Angels. Yes, even though you don't have the White Sox in the same division as the Cubs, it doesn't matter because there's such an odd number of teams. But a lot of people like to go ahead and see the White Sox and the Cubs. Yeah, but you're not going to get it right totally. You're not. There's going to be some. But if they're in the same league, they're still going to play each other more often than not. You will. So you'll see them 7-8 times a year going back and forth. And let's not lose sight of the fact that one rivalry that does get overstated or not recognized enough is you have the Milwaukee Brewers and the Chicago Cubs. Those areas are north side and Milwaukee is 45 minutes apart. So you'll see a lot of Cubbies fans pile into Miller Park. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics to it. But the only interstate type of rivalry that you're looking at right now will be the Phillies and the Pirates, and of course one of these days I'd love to see the Nationals and the Orioles in the same division, but now we're getting a bit ambitious of ourselves there. We really are. And we have in the American League, I
love all this talk. This is amazing.
Right, and what we have in the American League, you have the Astros and the Rangers in the same division. But again, now we're talking Cactus League versus Grapefruit League, and I like this. So now let me just ask you another question. We got another few more minutes to go in the broadcast. Of this particular format, could you visualize this format here being a permanent format, knowing that this is a massive radical change with what we're seeing? Create new rivalries with this group of 30 teams bunched up the way it is.
That's kind of what I was reiterating in or at least trying to get to. I can see it happening. I don't know if, whatever amount of games they play this year is enough of a sample size to say, oh, yes, this works. I think that maybe you go back to playing 162 games in 2021 and then they re-examine it and say, well, it worked last year and fans are clamoring for it. Let's give them what they want. Because this is a Band-Aid right now, as we've talked about.
Right.
This is something to help bring baseball back. It's something to above everything else, it's something to make everybody healthy. If they're going to bring the game back, this is the best way to keep everybody healthy. So maybe the league office hasn't looked at that far, right? But they'll take this experiment as a litmus test, and they'll decide whether they want to expand on that and see what happens.
See, what I like about this format is instead of keeping everybody bunched into the Arizona thing, and we'll get into that more often, okay, next week. But I like the fact that you have 15 in Florida and you have 15 in Arizona, so there's enough space. And if for no other reason, at least all the teams are in their own spring training facilities with their own weight room, their own training staff. And I think that's a part that really, really I like. And, there might be some players that have permanent Florida residences as well as Arizona, so they won't be as far from the families. Again, this is all speculation right now. But 15 here, 15 there doesn't mean that you're all bottled up in the one metro area. But again, I'm not going to talk about that a lot. But I like the fact that you're able to spread things out with all spring training facilities that are used year-round as a way to test out numerous different things, as you alluded to earlier in the broadcast. Any other closing thoughts before we talk about ways that we can people get a hold of us, David?
Other than I'm really excited about the fact that this first show for us has gone off really well. If that's the same kind of energy that we're able to give our listeners every week, I'm so excited about this.
Wow.
And I really am hoping that in the next few weeks we're going to be talking about live games that matter. And I miss baseball so much. I sound like a little kid when I talk about it, Scott. Yeah. But I was telling one of my friends today that there's something about this game, and I cover football as well. Mm-hmm. But there is something about baseball that is just ingrained in you. You play it as a child. You're out in the streets or the fields with your friends, and you grow up with it. And even if you don't play it growing as you get older, you still go back to it for its purity and its beauty and the fact that you have so many memories about it, from yesteryear. I want to see that again. And I just, we all need a diversion and a Band-Aid to what's going on around here.
Well, what we bring to this broadcast, David, is energy and experience. And, my history with baseball goes really a long ways. When Ernie Harwell's a friend/uncle to you, and Tom Lasorda is your first interview, and I've done a lot of spring training, and I've made a lot of great relationships over the years, then to me this was an ideal show. Obviously, when we created it, the guy that we had before is young, he's passionate about it. Does he have the ability to generate content, guests, and so forth? Not criticizing him by a long shot, but we're experienced and we have a lot of energy, and I have a lot of contacts that we'll be able to do. So there's no reason why that you and I, when we talk, and a lot of times, folks, we could go on, whether it's 30, 45 minutes, and talk about just regular headlines, and we would appreciate it if you're looking for any questions here for the broadcast. Contact us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com, and if you go ahead and send us a question that's related to this broadcast, we will go ahead and announce that on our next broadcast. We want to make sure that you get out there. Well, all we ask you to do is like it, subscribe to it, download it, share it. So subscribe, download it, and share it. And I think that you'll definitely be able to go ahead and get your money's worth. The one thing we aim here at the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, that it is our priority to make sure that you have the best entertainment possible, and that we appreciate the time that you're taking in your schedule to listen to what we have to offer. We feel that we have a lot to offer, and we won't encourage any kind of a feedback from any of you folks out there, because I'll tell you what, we've got a lot of great guests that we're looking on down the road, and David and I certainly have covered a lot of games. I couldn't tell you how many baseball games I've covered. I've played baseball 6 years, and I've been around the game my whole life, and being in a town like Detroit with a long baseball history, what can I tell you? When you're around Ty Cobb, I wasn't around, but he's part of the history. Charlie Granger, Hank Greenberg, Al Kaline, Mickey Lolich, just to name a few. That to me is a pretty good upbringing. And again, not only that, we also the teams that we're associated with, the Miami Marlins, are part of the broadcast. Since I live in South Florida, we cover them. But I'm proud of my baseball knowledge, and we want to make sure that everybody has the ability to do that. So, please help us grow this broadcast together, and I'm sure that we can all work on making sure that we give you something to look for. And what we consider our version of Monday Night Baseball with Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and David Levin. So, all right, David, we'll take this opportunity to let people know where you're, how they can reach you, and then I'll take it from there.
Okay, great. I work for Fansided. I cover the Marlins and minor league baseball. And I cover the Jacksonville Jaguars in the NFL. But that's for another time and another place. You can find me on Twitter at DM719907. Scott, this is really great. I really had a good time with this tonight. I'm so super excited still. While you have covered baseball a lot more than I have, my background is football and baseball. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I've had the opportunity to watch a lot of minor league baseball where I've seen Randy Johnson and Brett Saberhagen and Mark Kubica and Dodger players and Ken Griffey Jr. came through Jacksonville when the Mariners were there. Now the Marlins are there, and I've seen Stanton and Yelich and Ozuna and Jose Fernandez, God rest his soul, pitched 5 games in Jacksonville. I've had a chance to watch things that maybe are a little bit more current, but these are the stars that we're talking about today that are going to make an impact on this game. So I'm super excited about taking the past and the present and bringing it together on this show.
Well, you'll get that opportunity, and I'll let you know what my background is. I grew up with the Detroit Tigers, but I covered the Fort Lauderdale Yankees back in the 80s. I had Steve Merrill down here and a lot of great players that went through here. Jose Rio was a guy that was great. Rex Hudler, Brian Butterfield, and the list goes on. And then from Fort Lauderdale, I went to Tampa and had the opportunity to cover the Tarpons when they were with the Reds. And Joe Oliver was certainly one of my favorite people there. And there are a lot of other. So in addition, I have an appreciation of professional baseball, whether it's on the Class A level. And I actually had an opportunity to work with the Gastonia Rangers, a Class A affiliate in South Atlantic League. And folks, if you can imagine that a team that went ahead and lost 90 games would have 10, 12 major leaguers, whether it's coaching, and Sammy Sosa, Juan Gonzalez, Dean Palmer, just to name a few people around that. In addition to my experience of covering spring training since the 80s, I've covered football as well with the Detroit Lions and the Miami Dolphins, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I've been to many NFL stadiums around the country when I was traveling with the Lions as well. So just so you know, you can reach me at Tribune South on Twitter. My personal Twitter account is Scoop with 5 3s. And then I can also be reached through the South Florida Tribune on Instagram, South Florida Tribune, and like us on Facebook, South Florida Tribune, and I have a LinkedIn account, Scott Morganroth on LinkedIn, as well as my Facebook account. So yeah, David, it's been a lot of fun. I'm excited about the endless possibilities of what we're going to be able to do to get this thing done. And I don't know about you, buddy. I think we hit a grand slam home run with act number 1. What do you think?
I think we knocked it out of there. I can't give you a Harry Carey impersonation or anything like that, and I'm definitely not going to do Chris Berman because, we're Monday Night Baseball people. But that ball was out of here today. Let me just say that. We knocked it out of the park today. You're right, Scott.
Well, I'll go back to one of my old mentors before we get off the broadcast, and that's this, okay? Who used to work at Channel 7 here in Miami. His name is Andy Lascano. I believe he's located in Corpus Christi, Texas, but I learned a lot of my broadcast ethics from him, and I'll leave you guys on this note. Where did they hit it? Deep! And that's where we went. It was deep. And
we went deep, all right.
Yeah, we did, but we'll see. In the eyes of Tony Kornheiser, we'll see if we can do better the next time. So on behalf of my co-host, David Levin, this is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Man Mouse, saying good night, and we will see you next Monday on Monday Night Baseball, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Good evening, everybody.